Hey, it's Ron McLean. Welcome to Hockey Talk on the Rock.
With Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
All right. We are back doing a Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 92, the pod calls and puts goals in type episode. We're going to be talking about league stuff, but as always, we are going to start off talking about Canucks stuff, and they have won 3 of the last 4. Plan the parade. Let's go. I mean, they played some pretty bad teams, but they have won 3 of 4 after losing a whole bunch. So it feels good. We can talk about positives. We can talk about some negatives, and we're going to talk about the trades they made. So
for sure.
Take it away.
Yeah, so as you said, the Canucks have turned things around mildly. I mean, I don't know if that's really true, but we're going to say that they have. For now, they've won some games, which is good to see. They have beat, like, Seattle, they should have beat. Anaheim, they should have beat. And Pittsburgh has been playing really bad, so they should have beat them too. But, you know, again, going to take it as a positive. The last night's game in particular, I felt like the first period was rough. Just in general, and then they got better in the second period, and then the third period was just like insane. And I'm glad that they won because there was a couple of sketchy moments there. But Anaheim, you know, after watching the Canucks play for the beginning of this season, that team is not good.
Their defense is bad, and like down low, like the Canucks, they had no physicality, no answer for the Canucks down low. And
Gibson made some big saves. Like, yeah, it was tough to watch. I mean, that Zegras, Terry line, Strome line is decent. I thought that Spencer Martin didn't play great, but he still got the win. There's a couple of those goals that were not great. But yeah, it's good to see. Kuzmenko got his hat trick. He's been fun to watch, and you know, Bo keeps scoring goals, looking to cash in big time this offseason. And right now he's up to 10, and only McDavid has more than him. And obviously he's not going to keep this up, but it's fun to watch. I'm happy to have him in fantasy. But yeah, so I think those are the stories mainly. And then Pettersson is a story on his own, because I feel like we talked about it a lot. And we're finally seeing kind of the player that Pettersson could be. He's becoming great in both ends of the rink, and last night was insane. He put up the 5 points, but he just looked like on that one goal, he looks like a man kind of possessed, and it's great to see. He does need to be the best player on this team, basically, at least offensively, for them to have any success. So it's good to see. But again, if you want to look at it on the negative, they are going to have to pay him. They did sign him to that bridge contract, and sometimes it's not great, and they are going to have to pay, like, Kuzmenko if they want him to stick around. And Kuzmenko, it's early, right? I don't know. It's hard to say, but they definitely have chemistry. And yeah.
Yeah. One thing I noticed with Pettersson for sure is, like, he seems stronger on the board battles. Like, when he's defending the puck and he's like facing the boards or along the boards or whatever, he's not just getting like flung to the ice as much as he used to.
Yeah.
Which is good, because, like, you know, you need to be able to stand up to play hockey. But yeah, with the Kuzmenko thing, like, I'm trying to think back to when Breadman came over, and Kaprizov is a bit of a different story.
Yeah.
But when Breadman came over, he signed the 1-year deal, and then they gave him like 2 years at $5 million. Yeah. So I feel like there might be an opportunity to do a short-term sort of what you might call a bridge with him.
Yeah.
That's just because it's like, well, like, no one had you on their playbook yet, so they haven't figured you out. So we don't know if this is sustainable or whatever.
For sure.
So that might work out. Pettersson is worrying because he could take his 1-year qualifying offer and walk to free agency.
And Pettersson too, like, he made those comments, right, about willing to stay in Vancouver if they were a winning team. And that also worries me.
Yeah. So yeah, Bo Horvat, would it be a very Canuck thing to do to let him go to free agency for nothing? Yep.
Oh God.
would it also be a very Canuck thing to do to give him like all the money, like a 10.5 mil by like 8-year deal, and then be like, oh, now we got to sign Pettersson.
Yeah,
So
there's so much work that needs to be done on this team, and it is depressing and it's scary too, right? Because there's been a lot of talk about this, but when they re-signed Miller, the idea was for him to be a center, and I think he probably is going to end up being a center again. So this is probably like a pointless conversation, but it does raise the question with Bo, if you let him go or if you trade him, who's filling in for him? Who's taking those big face-offs? Because that is his role on the team right now, along with scoring goals. So yeah, it's a little bit concerning, but I don't think you can keep him. I really like Bo Horvat. I don't see it. I think you've made your bed.
On the positive side of things, trying to be a bit of positive here.
Yeah.
is it sounds like the cap is going to go up more than the original 1 million that they thought next year.
Yep.
So, if it goes up 4 and then it goes up like 4 again, some of these problems are addressable depending on what the ask is with the player, and especially with, the cap recapture, I think, is finally coming off the book, and Myers has only this year and next year left on his deal, and that's 6 million coming off the book.
And Myers might be movable in the off season. Like I say might, it depends on a lot of things, but the 1 year is easier to move. The Canucks can probably eat salary on it, and I think it would be okay in this case. And then the thing, like the OEL one, right? Like that's the big one. That trade is going to go down as one of the worst moves in Canucks history. But with OEL too, you wonder, like, he does not look good. And I wonder how much longer he's going to play.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough one too, because for a while it seemed like, well, at least they got Garland, and Garland has not had a great start to the season whatsoever.
I mean, he hasn't really been good since Boudreau took over. Like, that's to me the player that regressed the most after. I thought he had a good start to the season last year, and this year he's been worse than he was last year. Like, he does not. It almost seems like offense dies on his stick. That would be like the description I would give. But you've got problems throughout, and they have a surplus of wingers.
They do, and it's killing me that they can't keep Rathbone in the lineup, at least to get him on the second power play unit. Get him in the lineup just to get him on the second power play unit, because Ekman Larsson, like last year at least, was able to get shots from the point through, and he I don't know what he did in the offseason, but he looks awful. Like he should not be out there on a power play unit.
I don't understand why Stillman is playing over Rathbone. I mean, you can even make the argument for Burrows. I've not liked Stillman since he came to the Canucks. Yeah. But I feel like I agree with you. I think the Canucks, again, like with Quinn Hughes back in the lineup, it was immediately noticeable that they could move the puck more. But
it's true. But man, Hughes defensively, like even last game against Anaheim, there were some plays out there. It was like, oh man, like last year he took a massive step forward defensively, and he said that like he was trying to make a goal of that, and it seems like
he's regressed.
One step forward, 2 steps back in that scenario kind of thing.
I will say though, in Hughes's defense, it's not like, I'd say outside of Pettersson, I don't really think any Canuck has been decent defensively this year. It's a problem, right? But yeah, and I mean, you can also maybe throw in Shen. Like, Shen is Shen, but he's all right.
Serviceable.
He's serviceable, and he's not noticeably awful, which is a step up from most of the Canucks defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it will be interesting to see this week. They have Nashville coming up, and then they're going out east, so Montreal and Toronto. So, Nashville's been underachieving as well. So that's definitely a winnable game. Montreal should be a winnable game. And then Toronto is having all sorts of crises of their own. So,
yeah,
there's a chance.
Of those 3 teams, I feel like Nashville is going to be the hardest to get a win out of, just because they're just so deep, especially on their defense.
And the style of hockey they played too, right? Like that first period of the Canucks last night, to me, it felt like they were disinterested in playing. And they gave Anaheim more opportunities than they should have, but Anaheim just wasn't good enough to capitalize on them. But if you give those same opportunities to Nashville, I think it's over in the first period.
Yeah, and I mean, Nashville just wiped the floor with Calgary. What was
Yeah.
that, last night or 2 nights ago too? So
Yeah.
they
But
might
yeah,
be coming around, which would be bad news, but you never know. That's the game. So let's talk about the trades.
sounds
Um,
good.
I guess chronologically, the first one was Mikey DiPietro and what was his name?
Let me look it up.
The defensive prospect that
Defensive.
everyone, Myronberg. Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
Meyerberg, that sounds right to me.
Mikey DiPietro, who was getting surpassed on the depth chart by Archer Seelovs and Colin Delia and Spencer Martin. So you knew he was out the door. And then Myronberg, who was a 5th round pick, who sounded promising, but probably only promising for 2 reasons. One of which they don't have that many promising prospects. And two, because I think, like we talked about last year, maybe we were saying that there was going to be late round gems more than
Yeah.
used to because of COVID,
Yep.
because less opportunity to see players weren't playing as much, blah blah blah. And maybe Myronberg sounded like maybe one of those, but they got Jason Studnicka from the Bruins, who's like what, 23.
Yep.
The Bruins were afraid they were going to lose him on waivers. He's a very good AHL player, and I mean, he hasn't stuck with Boston, but Boston's center depth has been very good for a long time. So
Yeah.
it's tough to just want to put him on the 4th line when he's like a scorer clearly in the lower leagues. So
Yeah.
I don't know. At first, I was kind of pissed. Like, why are they trading their only right-handed defensive prospect when they don't have many prospects to begin with, and they keep trading their picks?
Yep.
But then, like, seeing the reaction from Boston fans, they seem pretty pissed, and
Yeah.
I guess they're holding out hope that he was going to be like a Bergeron replacement, which is pretty far fetched. But it makes me feel better about the deal. He's looked okay.
He's looked fine. The one thing I want to say with Mikey DiPietro, like I have 2 things I want to say about him. The first one is I do feel for him, because during that COVID year, he did not play any hockey, and I think that probably permanently damaged his development. And I do, like, I don't know, I don't think he probably would ever have become an NHL regular, but I think he could have been better than what he is. And then secondly, I also feel bad for him because the Bruins have now loaned him to Abbotsford, so he's still in the same situation. And it must kind of suck because I know that like his agent said that they wanted a trade, they wanted to move, and then it's like, oh, actually we traded you, but you're in the exact same situation. So
Wow.
I hope for him that something works out because I do feel for him. But
why? I mean, I haven't looked too much into the details, but like, why hasn't he been loaned to an ECHL club to get some playing time?
I don't know.
Because isn't it Delia and Seelovs in Abbotsford right now? Yeah, that seems odd. Especially from a Bruins perspective. Like, if you're taking a flyer on him, wouldn't you want him to play somewhere?
I don't know if they have anywhere for him to play, right? Which is why he's still where he was. But I don't know why they made that decision. So that's weird. So it kind of becomes like Myronberg for Studnicka, right? Like,
Yeah.
just straight up.
Which again, with the trade request and DiPietro's development,
Yeah.
he was kind of worthless to this organization anyway.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer.
It's a bummer, but yeah, you never know with Studnicka. He might come in and be able to play some center for the Canucks because their center depth is definitely not the same as Boston's.
Yeah.
But I don't have I don't have unrealistic hopes for him. He is 23. He's kind of is what he is, but he's looked all right.
Yeah, another typical who's the guy we've had for the last few years? Like, there was Jason Krog for a while, and then who's like Reed Boucher? Does that sound right?
Boucher, yeah, that sounds right.
Score a lot in the AHL, but just never put it together in the NHL. I don't know. That 4th line, mainly Joshua and Oman, or I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Like, they've looked like the type of guys you want on your 4th line.
Yeah, and I mean, Oman has been a really pleasant surprise for the Canucks this year. Like, that's the most positive, probably outside of Pettersson, that we can talk about for the Canucks so far, because he was not expected to make this team. I don't think he expected to make this team, and he's looked decent. Like, he's even when he was playing on the 3rd line, I thought he was doing an okay job, and yeah.
So if Studnicka can carve out a niche role and fit in with them and drive play and provide energy, then good.
Yeah.
win for the Canucks.
For sure.
Yeah, overall, with time to marinate it, I'd give the win to the Canucks on the trade and a participant ribbon to the Bruins.
I agree, and we'll see in a couple of years, if Myrenberg turns out to be another like Forsling for the Canucks, or if it's something like he never plays in the NHL. So, or yeah, I don't want to go down the next rabbit hole, so we're good. But
okay,
yeah. So next trade.
Next trade from the Hurricanes, Ethan Bear, who had yet to get into a game this year, apparently was staying in good shape. I heard Brenda Moore on the sports radio there talking about how he's been a consummate pro and they need to get him games and blah, blah, blah. And so anyways, he got traded with an AHL depth player to the Canucks for a 5th rounder. Again, sucks that the Canucks are throwing draft picks out there when they need draft picks, but they kind of needed defense that can move the puck, that can skate, that are right-handed. And Ethan Bear can do all those things, maybe as like a 4th, 5th, 6th D-man. I don't know if he has it in him to be anything more than a 4th, but
yeah. Again, I think given the situation the Canucks were in like last week, they had to do something. They couldn't keep like rolling out that same defense. And like Bear has looked good. He's looked good since coming to Vancouver, and I think he will fit in. My only problem with it is that I feel like you have a lot of kind of the same type of guys, though again, he can move the puck, so it's a little bit different. But you have these kind of like, I'd say 4th to 6th level defensemen, and you have a lot of them now.
It's the Sea of Granlunds, but on defense.
It is the Sea of Granlunds, but on defense.
Right? It's the Sea of Burrowses.
You talk about like Rathbone, like I don't know. Are you sending him to the AHL now? Because I would assume that Bear is going to fill in for what Rathbone could have done, even though Rathbone looks more dynamic. But it doesn't seem like they want to use him, and that scares me a little bit. But we'll see. I give the win to the Canucks, especially because they retain, like Carolina retains salary. So especially considering that, I would give the win to Vancouver, but we'll see how it goes.
So when they retain salary, like Hughes making 2.2 for 1 year, they retained $400K.
Yeah.
Does the qualifying offers be unaffected by that? Like if
I would assume so, yeah.
So if they wanted to qualify him, it would be the full 2.2.
I think so. But they could also flip him at the deadline. Like this is something that if the Canucks are super out of it, which they might be, but they probably won't be. I think they'll probably crawl back in and make it a race, but we'll see. Then you can flip him and probably get an asset for him. So it's low risk.
It is low risk. It's true. You never know. They might draft the next Myrenberg with that pick.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I'm with you. I feel like despite their poor defensive play, like last night when they were playing the Ducks, it looked like 2 bad hockey teams playing. It was super and entertaining.
It was fun. That third period was really fun.
13 goals scored in total and all that. But yeah, it looked like a couple bad hockey teams playing each other. But I feel like the Canucks will figure out their systems a little bit better. Their penalty kill hopefully won't set a record back-to-back years, and it will start to get better. And
well, on the penalty kill specifically, like I was looking at, they were practicing with new lines, and notably both Horvat and Miller were not playing on the penalty kill. Yeah, and I think that's good. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's Pettersson, Mikheyev took their place, right?
Yeah.
Probably smart.
Which I think is smart, and like the way, again, like Miller and Horvat they've been good offensively, and if you let them focus on that and not kind of play to their weaknesses, I feel like it's probably a good thing for the team if you have players that can fill in those roles on the PK. So yeah,
agree. Kind of the reason they brought in Mikheyev.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. This week will be exciting. And yeah.
Nashville tomorrow.
Nashville.
And so league-wise, there hasn't really been like trades to discuss, but there's been stuff happening. We are in the thick of the silly season.
Yeah.
What are we, 3.5 weeks in?
Yeah.
And we're seeing all sorts of
crazy
things that are out of order that will eventually realign to the normal, I believe. Like looking up the top 10 goalies with save percentage, or the top 10 teams in the league, and top 10 scorers, and like it happens every year.
For sure. I mean,
But it is funny.
yeah, I think like the notable ones, right? Like Eric Carlson. I don't think you can talk about him enough. Because last night he goes out, he gets like 2 more goals or something crazy. He's scoring like 56% of San Jose's goals. And obviously that's not gonna keep up. But I feel like I do feel good for Carlson that he's putting together an offensive season and he looks to be back to some degree. But yeah, that one's crazy. I mean, Darlene for a while there, and he's still putting up points, but like you've got these defensemen that are just going off. You got teams that are just going off, and then really freaking bad teams. But yeah,
Notably, like who Vancouver saw earlier this week, New Jersey's on a bit of a run. Kind of seems like Vanacek might be their guy. Like Blackwood had a couple good games, but he's maddeningly inconsistent. Vanacek can make a few saves, and I thought that was a good signing for them when they signed him. But like, there's things there too. Like Jesper Bratt's not going to be the leading scorer in the league all year, right?
no.
He's just on a 10-game heater that's kind of crazy to start the year.
So okay, this is my question for you. So you have New Jersey and you have Buffalo. Which of those two teams is more sustainable? Because I
New
feel
Jersey.
like they're similar, and yeah, I would lean New Jersey too because of the goaltending. But
I think one of the most, if not the most underrated moves from the offseason was them bringing in John Marino.
I knew you were gonna go there.
Yeah.
It's also like annoying as a Canucks fan, but it's true. I agree, 100%.
It just seems like he stabilized that defense where they, like in the past with Ty Smith and Dougie Hamilton and Damon Severson, like they had puck moving skilled defense, but they needed more steady stay at home type defense, and it seems like he's just fit in perfectly for them. And
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
maybe the best move in the offseason, like I say.
for sure.
But
And I
yeah, they
mean,
definitely have the offense. It doesn't hurt that they had a couple first overall picks and Hischier and Hughes and stuff like that. And they've got a couple other first round picks who are panning out quite well, like Dawson Mercer.
yeah, and if you think about it too, like that defense is just gonna get better. Like they have their first round pick from this year, Nemec, and then like Luke Hughes.
Yeah.
They're looking pretty dangerous for the future, and this is a team that, again, as a Canucks fan, it is frustrating because like their rebuild and the Canucks rebuild, I'm gonna put in quotation marks, kind of coincide at the same time. But now you're seeing like New Jersey, they look good, and it looks like they're gonna be good for a while. You can't predict it, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, the obvious difference is they like actually stripped it down and went for the high
Yeah,
pick.
exactly.
It's almost like it works.
You guys just got to give it a little bit of time. And then Buffalo is a different situation because they've been awful forever. And I mean, that's the ultimate fear, I suppose. But we've kind of seen this movie once before with Buffalo, and that's what I feel like, where they started good and then they've lost their track a bit. And I mean, I will say I was not a believer in Tage Thompson, but he looks legitimately terrifying.
Yeah.
And maybe it is like maybe this is their year that they're gonna make a little run of it, and we'll see. But yeah,
I just have more doubt with Buffalo because it is so early in the season, and there's players like Okposo and stuff like that where like I don't think it's going to be sustainable for them the full year.
For sure.
But they've got some pieces. Like it seems like Skinner isn't a 1-year resurgent player. It seems like he's kind of found it again. And with Darlene and Power and stuff like that, like they could be like it's going to take time, probably as Cousins and Krebs and stuff start to develop better. A couple more years. But it's kind of like a preview of where they're headed,
Where they're headed for sure. Yeah.
And then I can't really think of any other surprises. I mean, there's teams like you've already mentioned, Toronto, who's slumping. They have some crazy losses to some teams that they should not be losing to, like Arizona and Anaheim. Tampa Bay has even struggled out the gate too.
Colorado, I mean, they won today, but they haven't been great. I had a thought this morning. So after listening to like Bietska's speech, about how he was so proud of the culture that they built in Vancouver, and then also listening over the past few days to a lot of the talk about Toronto and Vancouver specifically, and how those two rooms don't seem to have the same culture that I feel like teams in the past have. And what I was wondering about is maybe like because of the flat cap and things have stayed relatively similar for so long in the league, like there's been changes, obviously, like Eichel moved, for example, to Las Vegas, and that would shake up both locker rooms. But I'm wondering if maybe there's like people are just stale, like they feel like they're bored of these teams. Like I kind of feel a bit like that with the Canucks, and that's weird for me. But like if it's just like, yeah, there needs to be more movement or something.
Yeah, make them trades.
Make them trades now. I don't
Yeah.
know, but
Make big trades.
there's a lot of similarities, except for the fact the Leafs are a better team. But there is a lot of similarities with what you hear people talking about Toronto and what you hear them say about Vancouver. So
Yeah, and it like you can compare those two in the sense as well that like when the big guys are going, the team is going, but when the big guys aren't going, they don't have a lot to fall back on, And you kind of see it with Toronto and Austin Matthews and his slow start.
yeah,
And not saying that he's totally responsible for the team losing.
no.
You look at even Marner and Bunting's scoring rates this year to start the year. Like Matthews ain't scoring, and those guys are down on their points too, right?
For sure.
Like the nights that the Canucks don't have Pettersson going and Miller slumping, like who else is going besides Bo, I guess.
Well, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah, anyways, that's all I got for this talk.
I think that's all I got as well.
All right. Well, we'll talk again probably next week. We'll do it all again and talk about Nashville and maybe Montreal and maybe Toronto. Depends on when we get together.
Sounds good. Looking forward to some hockey.
All right. This has been Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 92.